The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I am Kathy Guidry, and today's topic is implementing Erins Law through relationship skills education. I'm so excited to have Dr. Anita Barbee and Polly Edwards-Padgett with us today. Also, we have with us Erin Barley, Dibble's Director of Education. Before we get started, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. Everyone is on mute, but if you do experience audio difficulties during the broadcast, please make a note of this phone number and access code. You can actually view the webinar and listen to the webinar on your phone. Also, we're going to have you participate in 3 different ways today. The first way would be to type any questions in the questions box. And we actually ask you to jot any questions down because at the end of the webinar, we will have 10 minutes or so of Q&A, and at that time, we'll ask you to type your questions in the questions box. If you have any technical questions, you can type them whenever you'd like. If we don't get to your questions today, be sure that we will email you personally and answer your questions and concerns. The second way is to raise your hand. In your control panel, you'll see a hand shape by your name. So in order to raise your hand, you would just click on that button. And then the third way is we'll have some poll questions today for you to answer. You'll just use your cursor and you will actually click on the answer to the poll question when I launch them. I know many of you like to watch this webinar later or share it with your colleagues. So we will be recording this webinar and I plan to have it up on our website by Tuesday of next week. I want to start out by just asking any of you to look in your control panel, and I'd like to know how many of you have actually, this is actually your first time attending a Dibble Institute webinar. You raise your hands? Great, well, I'd like to say welcome to all of you. And I'd like to start out by just doing a very short introduction piece about the Dibble Institute. These are our founders, Charlie and Helen Dibble. Charlie was an aeronautical engineer by trade, and as most engineers, he liked to solve problems, and he liked solutions. So some 30 years ago, he saw how relationship issues were affecting the outcomes of young people and their future relationships. He started volunteering with the youth at his church. So when he couldn't find any answers to questions that he had for the youth, he began to ask lead experts in the field of relationship education what they were doing to convey to young people the need to create stable families. Charlie didn't get a lot of answers to this question, so it was then that he decided it was necessary to take research and supply materials to young people that would enhance their romantic relationships. So here we are, the Dibble Institute, 30 years later, helping young people to have access to relationship education materials. The Dibble Institute is a national independent nonprofit research organization. We are able to reach many young people thanks to your efforts at partnering with us. You are the ones that do the direct services. Did you know that you have helped us reach more than 1.5 million young people in the last 10 years? Thank you for the partnership that you have with the Dibble Institute. I'm going to talk a little bit now about the core values of the Dibble Institute so that you know what we believe and where we get our information. Excuse me. First and foremost, we believe in research. We go where the research leads us and base our materials on what the research tells us. It's very important to the Dibble Institute that we keep our materials up to date with the most current research. Secondly, we believe in stable, healthy families. Although we know there are trends, we follow the research again. Research shows that children do best when raised by their own 2 parents. Research also shows that children do best when parents are together. Now, we do understand that not all families have 2 parents. There are many single parents who do heroic, great jobs and have great outcomes with their children. But we also know how difficult single parenting can be. We also believe that high conflict, abusive situations are not good for children, and those relationships are better being apart. And finally, the Dibble Institute believes that all people deserve to be treated with respect. All relationships get better, stronger, and healthier with relationship education. Our materials are suitable for all kinds of relationships. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually read a brief bio of each of our presenters, because they have such an impressive bio, and they have done great work in both of their fields, each of their fields. I'm going to start out with Dr. Anita Barbee. She is a professor and distinguished university scholar at the Center for Family and Community Wellbeing, Kent School of Social Work at the University of Louisville. Her scholarship has included the study of the formation, maintenance, and dissolution of close relationships for the past 30 years. Over the past 15 years, she and her colleagues have studied the impact of several healthy relationship, violence prevention, and teen pregnancy prevention curricula on adolescent attitudes and behavior, including Love Notes, which is a Dibble published material. Her team is currently delivering Love Notes through a FISBE SRAE grant to over 1,000 vulnerable youth to see what aspects of the curriculum resonate with youth the most. They have enhanced the curriculum with information about how to prevent sexual assault. And we also have with us Polly Edwards-Padgett. She has 16 years of experience in the field of teen pregnancy prevention across South Carolina. Polly came home to Spartanburg to assist her hometown in reducing teen pregnancy. As a former executive director of a local teen pregnancy prevention coalition, a director of technical assistance for the South Carolina campaign to prevent teen pregnancy, and a consultant to various reproductive health groups, Polly is leading the efforts in Spartanburg funded by the Office of Adolescent Health. Her passion and extensive experience in holistic adolescent health, positive youth development, and access to reproductive health programs and services is leading the community to prevent social disparities and reduce unplanned pregnancies. And I'm just really thankful that they're here with us today. My name, again, is Kathy Guidry, and I have been with the Dibble Institute for 6 years. I am the customer service and training manager, so I'm the person that answers all of your customer service questions typically, or directs you to the right person, but I'm also the person that coordinates the training if you're interested in having any training done with the Dibble Institute. So before we start in with Anita, I'm going to ask a poll question. And this is a simple yes or no question. Does your organization have programming that focuses on sexual abuse assault prevention? You can use your cursor and just click which one, yes or no. This will help us know, although you registered, this will help us know a little bit about the programming you do. Okay, let's see what everybody says. Well, we've got 69% of the people on there says yes, the organization does, and then 31% says no. And I'm sure that doesn't mean that you don't necessarily want to. It may not be your focus, and it may be something that you're thinking about as well. I would like, first of all, just to share a little bit of information that I had gotten off of ErinsLaw.org, which is the website for Erins Law. And that's basically what the part of the webinar that I'm doing. I'm not the expert. We're talking to two other experts, so I'm sure you all have more expertise than I do in this particular subject. But I thought the facts would be interesting to start with. There are 42 million survivors of child sexual abuse in America. 3 million are children, which would fill 46 national football stadiums. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 4 boys have been sexually abused before their 18th birthday. 90% of children are sexually abused by someone they know and trust. And there are over 747,000 registered sex offenders in America. So now I'd like to hand the presentation over to Dr. Anita Barbee, who's going to share with us how Love Notes, a Dibble curriculum, can be used in the prevention of sexual assault. Anita?
Hey, thanks, Kathy, so much for that great introduction. So we can move on to the next slide. And what I want to talk to you about is really just a very focused aspect of some of our work on trying to prevent teenagers from getting into situations or causing situations where there might be unwanted sexual activity or sexual assault. And we all know that those things can range from just feeling pressured to do something you're not wanting to do, all the way to being forced in a very violent way. And the reason we think this is important for us for teen pregnancy prevention and including pieces of dating violence and assault into a healthy relationship curriculum that's aimed at trying to reduce teen pregnancy is because one of the reasons why teens have experience of pregnancy is that someone is often using a range of coercive messages or behaviors to get someone else to do something they're not interested in, that they don't want or they're not ready for. And so it's important to keep that in mind, that this isn't always consensual activity going on, or there's pressure that people don't even realize that they're under. There's some anecdotes in the world that a lot of the youth that become pregnant become pregnant as a result of being engaged in sexual relationships with adults who are many years their seniors. So obviously that would be considered assault, and there are laws that cover that. But we know that also this can happen with peers. There's also a real movement in America to address these things. The Erins Law is one of those things that's a catalyst for addressing all kinds of sex abuse, but also this particular type. And we also know that the script for sexual encounters is changing, and that now there's more and more of an emphasis on consent and giving consent and asking for consent if any kind of sexual behavior is to occur, and expanding the notion of what is considered to be assault. And so we're in kind of a changing period of time, and so it's important to give youth the space to talk about and think about these issues so that they can be safe. The other thing is that because these kinds of things can lead to pregnancy or disease or other kinds of unwanted consequences, it's important that youth kind of know what's going on in terms of these changing norms. The next slide really just talks about the fact that Love Notes already had embedded in it different principles that would help prevent assault without even necessarily talking about it directly. So just helping you think about life goals and where relationships fit into those goals, and helping clarify what success looks like in terms of life and in terms of relationships, and helping clarify values around those things is a beginning stepping stone to preventing these kinds of things from happening. The other thing Love Notes does is repeatedly throughout the curriculum talks about ways to choose a partner who is a good match, a romantic partner, by understanding yourself, what you want and need, your personality, your values, your life vision, what you want in a partner, what things have happened in your past that might influence your choices, but choosing a good person that matches you, and learning the techniques to both assess that and then demand in many ways the respect and the kind of things that you need in a relationship is a core part of Love Notes. The other piece of that is looking at and assessing people for safety. Is a person that you're wanting to date or hang out with someone who's going to be a safe person to be around, whether that's psychological safety, are they going to treat you again with respect and not emotionally abuse you or psychologically try to control you? Are they physically safe? Are they going to keep from doing anything that might hurt you physically? And then, also socially, are they going to isolate or let you have lots of different kind of friendships and relationships with family and others in a healthy way? So they think about those kinds of issues of who am I interacting with, and are they safe, and should I continue to be around this person? It also helps them think about themselves, because in adolescence you're still developing, and sometimes the youth in the program will realize, I'm a person who is controlling of others, or I'm a person who can get angry and kind of hit a wall, and maybe I need to think about how I can regulate my emotions better, or let go of things, or not be so pushy in a relationship. So it teaches the youth, no matter where they're coming at this, how to both be safe towards others and also choose well. The next slide talks about some other aspects. Again, we've talked about this before, but this setting expectations is a whole module on looking at expectations and what do you want in a relationship, and setting the bar somewhat high rather than just letting people walk all over you or do things that you don't want to do, or feel like you got to change in order to please the person. Those kinds of expectations are important to establish early. Also detecting early signs of again, as we talked about, the safety issue of violence or control, or that they might be a predator. We've now included some information in Love Notes where we help youth understand about human trafficking and sex trafficking, and what those kind of people look like and how they behave and where they are, and the ways they try to entice young people into that kind of work. And so even though that may seem like an extreme situation, we've got a lot of vulnerable youth that we work with in Kentucky who are in the foster care system, who are runaway youth and homeless youth in the juvenile justice system, youth in high poverty neighborhoods, and a lot of times or in rural areas that are very isolating. They're very vulnerable to this if they're isolated in any way, or feel the need for protection or care from an adult. They may be vulnerable to this, so that we've included some of that information in our latest version. The other thing is just how to get out of a relationship that's unhealthy if you find yourself in one, if there's any kind of signs of any of these behaviors, which is all related to abusing you sexually, because sometimes it starts physically or emotionally, and then it can be a sexual assault as well. The next slide talks about another aspect, the aspect of pacing relationships, drawing lines, not being coerced to do anything that you don't want to, how to give and seek consent if you're going to do this, although we really emphasize in the SREE program to wait until marriage, a committed relationship, which is well into adulthood usually, because now people aren't getting married until they're about 28 years old. So having those kinds of ability to set boundaries is very important if you've got to wait that long. If we're working with kids that are 14, 28 is a long way away. So those kinds of skills are very important to develop. We also have in the curriculum the role of chemicals, whether it's natural chemicals or substances that are ingested that can affect your ability to judge a person's character or stave off any kind of risky situation. And that's not, the good thing about Love Notes is we could talk about these kinds of issues in a prevention context. That the way to prevent problems is to know that your judgment is impaired early in a relationship, because you've got neurotransmitters and oxytocin and other kinds of hormones floating around in your body that make you not judge as well as you would if you were clear-headed and didn't have those elevations of neurotransmitters and hormones, and that alcohol and drugs just makes that even more so. And, you know, we know that sexual assault in particular is often happens in the context of drinking and taking drugs and so that's not to blame victims, but it is a risk factor that we want youth to become aware of before the fact, before they get in these kinds of situations, so that they're have friends around them if they ever decide to do these things, but that primarily we're encouraging them not to engage in those kinds of risky behaviors because it could lead to these other problems. The other piece is the issue of waiting on making any kind of major decisions, including having sex, until those chemicals have subsided, which can take up to 9 months to happen. And by then you've moved on to the next person that you think is kind of cute or interesting. So this helps to push this, kick that can down the line before any kind of sexual encounter is even contemplated. So that's another piece there that can help, again, in setting people up to kind of hold off and not get in situations where they're more vulnerable to assault happening. Okay, then the next slide. We also talk about this long road and the long-term goals of being in a committed relationship, and the importance of having all those skills so that kids learn how to communicate, how to have good conflict, because that does happen and that's normal. But how to negotiate these kinds of situations so that everybody's very clear about telling their expectations and managing any kind of difference of opinion around these issues, how to do that in a way that's safe and healthy. And so, you know, some of what we've even talked about in as we've added this to the curriculum is, you know, really making up your mind very clearly and being able to communicate and practice communicating exactly where you are. Because our dating script in the United States is very unhealthy and is really part of what has driven these kinds of sexual assault scenarios. It's not just predators who are horrible people who are pushing lines and being aggressive. That there is that component, but some of the problems that we're seeing and that we're hearing about in the media, especially with young people who are still trying to figure out these kinds of parameters and what is the dating script and how do I navigate these relationships in these situations, sets people up for a lot of confusion and lack of communication, where then people feel used or that they've been pushed beyond their limit after the fact, and then they feel violated and the person may not have even understood that they were doing that. And so everybody's lives are affected. So again, in a prevention context, you can kind of have kids talk about these kinds of issues so that they can be much more clear that I am definitely not going to have sex until I'm married, and here are the ways I'm going to prevent that, and here are the situations I need to figure out how to get out of. If I find myself in them, here are the ways that I can avoid those situations from happening altogether. And if there's, you know, every now and then we serve kids up until their early 20s, because young adults are also, especially in the foster care system, at very high risk for pregnancy and derailing their lives. And so, you know, they're closer to the time when they might consider marriage, but sometimes they will decide that they're just going to have this happen in their lives. And so they have to be very clear. Yes, this is what I'm going to have, and I'm going to use birth control, and I'm going to ask for and seek consent, and we're going to make very clear, almost like a contract ahead of time, what's going to happen, what's okay, what isn't, and be very communicative. So communication skills are very important in this. And again, our larger media and scripts in the United States are really hurting people's ability to manage these things in a way that keeps people safe. So it's that ambivalence of saying, well, I don't really, know if I ever want to do this or not. That's the danger zone. The ambivalence around whether I'm going to have sex or not. And I'll just kind of, oops, it happened. and I'm not going to take any responsibility ahead of time. It'll just be something that happens naturally. Those are where all these gray areas and all the problems occur. So we've developed some scenarios and conversations to help kids really think about how to be clear ahead of time, so that confusion doesn't happen. So we're coming at this more from a young adult perspective and how to prevent these kind of problems, and emphasizing that there's no reason for any of them to ever be in a romantic or sexual relationship with an adult, that's inappropriate, it's against the law, and just making that clear, because I don't know that people always have been making it clear, which is why it may be more prevalent than we realize. So in that sense, we're preventing child abuse, or sexual abuse and assault, but really more focusing on how they can take control of their lives in a way that can, prevent problems for themselves and others down the road. So those are the ways that we've been able to utilize this information. Mostly Love Notes had it. All we did was kind of add a few little pieces to help make it a little more salient. So, I'm glad that this law is out there and that there's an opportunity to be able to talk about all of these issues. We also have a piece where we talk about texting and sexting, and talk about the whole online, mobile tech environment where sexual things are happening. And that's the other piece of the safety, and that they can get in trouble legally if they send pictures of themselves. It could be considered child pornography, and all those kinds of things are also included in Love Notes. So anyway, that's what I've got.
Great. Thank you so much, Anita. I think it's just the Dibble Institute focuses on teenagers and young adults, and in the area of sexual assault and sexual abuse. I think it's that so many times that we think of small children or young children who are being sexually abused and assaulted. And it's not that we don't forget the older kids, but we think they can handle it themselves. And so I think you gave us some really good tips on how relationship education, specifically Love Notes, can help young people learn more about how to prevent sexual assault by learning more about themselves and talking about situations that they can ahead of time learn how to get out of. So I appreciate that. So what I'm going to do next is I want to talk a little bit about Erins Law. And first, I'm going to show you a video from Erin Marin from her website. Unfortunately, I did ask for Erin to join us today, but that was not possible. So this is just a little bit about how she became the founder of Erins Law and what she did to get it out into the states. Okay. Sorry, it just takes a few minutes to get off that video. A couple years ago, I had just somehow run into Erins Law and started doing just a little bit of looking at it. And then I had a conversation or something caught my ear when I was talking or getting emails from Polly Padgett about how Polly Padgett was the Mary Black Foundation was helping to implement Erins Law into the schools there in some of the areas of South Carolina. So that is one reason I was thinking that this would be a good webinar. There would be two things. One, I get a lot of calls monthly about people and teachers in particular that want to do relationship education, but they don't know how to approach their principal. They don't know how to get into their schools so that there is a favorable response. And I'm thinking this could be a gateway for some of you, for some of the teachers and for some of the organizations to be able to get into the middle and the high schools in particular. But also, in some states, there may be monies available to actually help to implement this type of education. And so this may be one other way using Erins Law to do that. So Erins Law requires that public schools in each state where the law is passed implement a prevention-oriented child sexual abuse program, which teaches the students, and I love this, it's grades pre-K through 12th grade, teach them with age-appropriate techniques to recognize child sexual abuse and tell a trusted adult. And the second thing is that it teaches the school personnel all about child sexual abuse. So the students and the teachers are getting education. Then lastly, and a lot of times most importantly, that it teaches, they want you to teach parents and guardians the warning signs of child sexual abuse and where to get referrals and resource information to support these sexually abused children and young adults and their families. So the next, I want you to take a few minutes. I want you to look at this list of 35 states from the ErinsLaw.org. This is a current list of states that actually have passed Erins Law. And it is in the order of which they have passed it. So I want you to kind of look here for a few minutes, see if you can pick your state out. And then I want you to look at this list. These are the states that the law is now pending. So I want you to look right there at that particular list as well. So hopefully you've been able to find your state. And what I want you to do is I'm going to launch this poll question. Do you live in a state that has passed or is going to pass Erins Law? Did you recognize your state or be able to pinpoint your state out of one of those lists? Let's see what we have here. Wow, 89% yes and 11% no. So hopefully the 11%, Erin is still working hard to try to get Erins Law passed in those states. Okay. I'm sorry. So one of the questions I found interesting on the website was, what happens when Erins Law is passed in a state? And she has written that each state, and then we kind of alluded to this, that each state has a different approach depending on the language of the law. Some states require to begin to be taught the start of a new school year, and other states allow the State Board of Education to give schools a year to prepare for implementation. And when we hear Polly talk about where she is in South Carolina and the South Carolina law, she will give us more information about that particular state. But this is something that you need to think about looking at in your state to find this information out. Okay, and another question I want to ask you is, are schools in your area implementing Erins Law if your state has passed the law? Sorry, I kind of did a typo on that poll question. Yes, no, or don't know. Okay, 23 say yes, they know that it has. 12% no, and then 65% I don't know. So this is a great thing to start kind of investigating, or have someone in your school system kind of start researching to find out what they're doing about Erins Law in your school, in your school district, in your state. Okay, and then another question, what if Erins Law has passed in your state and is not being taught in your school? Well, these are her recommendations. Definitely first talk to your principal and ask what is being done to teach the Erins Law. Then, of course, go to the school board and the superintendent. And then lastly, you may have to go all the way to the State Board of Education. So we're going to get into some specifics here. I am welcoming Polly Edwards-Padgett, and she's going to speak about how the Mary Black Foundation has helped to implement Erins Law in the schools in their area. Are you with us, Polly? Polly? Well, let's give her a few minutes. Let's see. Polly?
Kathy, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Can. I was getting afraid that I was going to have to do your puzzle here.
Sorry about that.
And I would not do it as you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Greetings from South Carolina. So I apologize. I had a little technical difficulty there. So yes, we did pass Erins Law in South Carolina. And just as you alluded to before, the first year, our State Department of Education here in South Carolina chose to train our teachers first and get our school environments prepared for implementation of the Erins Law materials. And so that first year, our schools across the state participated in a training program called Darkness to Light. And their website is d2l.org. And that is an online training program that they were allowed to do that first year. What was interesting about our process is that first year, the state law passed, and they had a year to kind of train the schools, get the school environment prepped for Erins Law. But there wasn't a lot of direction on what was going to be done implementation-wise in the classroom. And one of the things here in South Carolina is our school districts are very locally controlled. And so the State Department of Education has a law called the Comprehensive Health Act here in South Carolina. That law really was passed in '88 and outlines very clear laws around what can and can't be taught K through 12th under health and wellness. And the decision was made to put Erins Law, as well as a new act that passed in our state at about the same time called the Domestic Violence Act, both under that provision at the State Department of Education, to include the content in those laws to give some guidance to our schools. At that time, in the first year for the training piece, our local school districts came to the Mary Black Foundation. And for everyone to know, the mission of the Mary Black Foundation is to invest in people and communities for improved health and wellness and success in Spartanburg County. And I actually work in the Adolescent Health Division of our organization. And we have an adolescent health initiative called Connect. And we did provide a handout. It's a PDF included on your panel that you have for the webinar for more information about the model of Connect. But one of the things we're always working towards at Connect is improving the lives of teens by preventing early childbearing and increasing research-based policies, practices, and programming to improve adolescent health and wellness. And one of the things the Mary Black Foundation has always done very well is served as a convener. And so a lot of times it's my job to kind of keep my eyes and ears open of what's impacting our youth in our community at the state level that's going to be trickling down, as well as local initiatives, and how can we convene partners, pull the community together to maximize our resources and our experiences to make sure that we're using evidence-based, data-driven strategies to improve health and wellness. You can't watch Erin's video without being very moved around the experiences she had not once, but twice. And so for us, a lot of the Erins Law conversation was around if we're going to do Erins Law, and this is going to be a state mandate. And for us, it was an unfunded mandate. So it was going to have to happen in our schools, but no funding was coming from our Department of Education to help our schools implement anything. So our schools were, and the other caveat was that if you don't do it, you lose state funding. There were penalties associated. So our schools were really seeking out assistance and support. And so we were able to convene the experts in our community in this subject matter. So we pulled together our Child Advocacy Center, our Rape Crisis Safe Homes. We have a Compassionate Schools initiative here in Spartanburg. We pulled those folks together, as well as some of our mental health professionals, and really pulled together the group of experts working on these issues in our community, and said, you know, our schools are going to be doing this. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to say, here are the best practices, here's the research strategies that we know can be effective in actually moving the needle. So as a foundation, we actually worked with the school districts pre-K through 12th grade and looking at what could be done for Erins Law. And a lot of the work in the adolescent health space, obviously, if we can prevent sexual abuse as a young person, as a child, we know that that will have a huge impact on overall health and wellness for them as adolescents. So we did that. It was a long process. It took a while. We vetted a lot of different curricula, looked at a lot of different resources. We did identify an elementary, middle, and high program that we wanted to see implemented in our community. Obviously, the first year, we spent a lot of time thinking about sustainability. We also knew this was an unfunded mandate, so we didn't want to be investing in strategies that could not be sustained at the end of different grant opportunities. So we wanted to make sure that what we were providing to our schools, we were providing in a way that was sustainable. And so today I'm speaking specifically about Love Notes, which is our high school model. And we, because of the Comprehensive Health Act, a lot of this was looking at what were the state laws and policies, how were they going to integrate Erins Law in, and where were there opportunities for a really evidence-based model that could move the needle. And so for us in our state, the Comprehensive Health Act requires that you have 750 minutes of instruction before you can finish high school. And so for our ninth graders, it was a very easy fit. And when we looked at the different programs, one of the things the schools said, who were also represented on that committee, was, you know, we want to do this, we want to do it well, but we also have a limited time for instruction. And in our state, they did not put a time stamp on Erins Law. So they didn't say, you've got to do this within 5 hours or 30 minutes. There was no timestamp. And what we didn't want to happen was for it to be a 5-minute, 10-minute conversation that was not of quality and not evidence-based. And so in our ninth grade, we had the opportunity to provide a lengthier curriculum. We were able to align Love Notes with all of the standards and indicators for our Comprehensive Health Act, and then specifically our Erins Law and Domestic Violence Act as well. So it was one curriculum that can meet the needs of multiple standards and indicators for our schools. And we included the handout specifically to Erins Law and Love Notes. In our state, and your state will be different, but those were the standards and indicators that were released by our State Department of Education on what needs to be addressed under Erins Law and opportunities for Erins Law content, especially at the high school level. But they did that at every level, all the way down to our pre-Kers.
Okay, and if I can just, Polly, if I can just say, she's talking about the handouts. If you look in your control panel, there are 2 handouts that you can actually download now. I will also be sure that we attach them or put them with the recording that we'll have posted on our website. So you definitely want to look at those. Sorry.
Right. So, you know, we really worked with our committee, and as a community, we kind of rallied together. We are in South Carolina. We do have limited resources, and we really rallied together to make sure our schools were fully supported. And like I said, at our high school level, Love Notes was one of the selected curricula. Can you go to the next slide?
Sure.
Sure.
Here you go. I asked Polly specifically to answer some questions for us so that you would get more insight in what they're doing in her area. So, Polly?
Sure. So, you know, obviously for Love Notes, this is a more in-depth curriculum. In our state, it is our State Department of Education has mandated that certain teachers are responsible for the Comprehensive Health Act. And so we really wanted to make sure those teachers had the training and capacity that they needed to be successful in implementing Love Notes for our ninth graders. And so we did do a lot of training of teachers first, making sure they had the curriculum and supplies that they would need to be successful, and getting them comfortable. This is obviously, I think a lot of the first year in doing the darkness to light training was, kind of opening up, okay, we're going to be addressing this, starting to get folks comfortable. Then the curriculum training, delving deeper into their comfort level and their capacity in providing this education to our youth. And we also really felt strongly, a lot of states do this differently, and even some of our neighboring counties use outside agencies to come in and provide the content, and then they leave. And one of the things our committee really felt passionately about was that it was folks in the school buildings providing the content, because at any point in time, a young person may need to disclose. And it may not be that moment that professional is there providing the education, that they would be leaving at some point, and that person wouldn't be there anymore. So we really strongly encourage the schools to train their own staff in partnership with guidance and providing this information, so that if a child was ever in these situations or needed to disclose, the folks in the building were fully prepared, knew the language that the curriculum was providing, and there was continuity in language from pre-K all the way through the high school level. And that way we knew it was a fear of ours having outsiders come in, although we know there are folks who are experts in this field who would have done a dynamic job. A lot of this is around disclosures and comfort with disclosures, and we really felt pretty strongly if it's going to be sustainable, and the goal is disclosures, we had to get our teachers comfortable with the content and the information as well.
Okay. Ready for the next question?
Sure.
Okay. What is the process the Mary Black Foundation used to foster the implementation of Erins Law in your area schools?
So, obviously us really knowing and understanding the law, having close communication with the Department of Education, having those standards and indicators, all of that being said, it was very important to understand where our state was and what our state was asking of our schools, but then also really understanding that our schools are locally controlled. So although Department of Ed may say, these are all the things we want you to do, I have 7 school districts with 7 school boards and 7 committees responsible for this content. And those committees are made up of 13 members who have very specific roles in our community. So a lot of the processes for us was, we were a trusted source, and I think that is huge in any community, and convening folks to have the conversation, and then really knowing what they were being asked to do from the state level, being able to speak that language from what they were getting from the state level, and then being a partner at the table to say, we're here to help you figure this out. We had resources as well to say, we know this is an unfunded mandate, we know this is going to be a heavy lift, but we're here to help you, we're here to partner, and then being able to meet the needs of 7 different school districts, which was really a challenge, and being able to have those conversations and letting them know up front, that we were there to help them and to advocate with them, what would be best for the students. I think for us, a lot of stars aligned kind of at the same time, as far as the new standards and indicators coming out around the same time Erins Law was coming out. We talked a little bit about the Comprehensive Health Act. For us, just so you know, Love Notes is utilized in the 9th grade. But obviously, we also have our 10th, 11th, and 12th graders as well. And talking about how the curriculum that they get in 9th grade, which is their core, how are we providing boosters, how are we continuing those same messaging, same conversations that's provided in Love Notes each year as they finish high school. And like we say all the time, Erins Law is meant to address a really complex, difficult issue. And so a lot of what we talk about is that the curriculum is the first step, but is not the only thing. We know our youth need supports and services in a lot of ways, and how we're connecting youth to the services they need in the community, to the caring adults in their buildings, to really help them navigate those challenges.
That is great. Well, Polly, it definitely sounds like you've got a very committed community of people that are really invested in the project, and with the leadership of you and the Mary Black Foundation, the implementation seems like it's been able to really move through the school systems there. So that's really great. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And I hope that it gives all of you here on the webinar maybe some ideas or maybe some research that you need to do or would like to do. So now I'm going to ask for any questions. We've got a few minutes. So if you will type any of your questions in the question box, and Irene, you may have some already for us. Do you?
I do not have any, but I want to mention that there were several people who said they could not view, the video was not showing on their screen.
Okay.
And so possibly if you could give them the link where they could pull it up on their computers individually.
Yes, for sure. I will be putting that link with the webinar recording.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great. It could be, I'm not sure why, it could be in the browser. I'm not really sure why.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking. Well, I do not see any questions posted thus far.
Well, that just might mean that Anita and Polly did a great job, and I think all of you can tell why I feel like they are just leaders in their area of expertise, and I have gleaned a lot of information from them myself.
I do have one comment that was made when you pulled up the list of the states that are that have currently passed Erins Law. Someone mentioned that that was not the most recent list. I know that there were states that are working on passing Erins Law, and I think you've received that list from their website, correct?
Correct. And by the, I'm not sure how much, this is the most recent one on their website, so I'm not sure how often they update it. But yeah, if someone would like to send me that state that they think should be on there, I can find out exactly, or if they can share with us when they passed it, that would be perfect. Good information to have.
Living in Ohio, I noticed that it was in process of passing. So,
as well as North Carolina, where we are too.
So let's hope that we get 100% passing of this important law for schools.
Exactly. Well, if we don't have any questions, I'm going to move on so that those of us that are on Eastern time can be finished by 5 o'clock so we can finish our day. There is a brief survey at the end of this webinar. If you'll please fill that out for us. It also helps us if you have any particular questions or anything we need to contact you about. It helps us there. Again, I said the webinar will be available in 3 days. I'm actually off tomorrow, so it'll probably be by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. If you have any questions, you can email myself or Irene, and we can put you in touch with Anita and Polly. They could answer more specific questions about what they're doing in their particular programs and about their expertise areas. Again, stay in touch with us. If you do register for our webinars, we do put you on our newsletter list unless you ask us not to. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and this 1-800 number is where you will find me most days. So feel free to contact me there for anything you might need.
And in ending, Kathy, can I just mention too, again, reiterating your being thankful for all the work that the people on our video have done in working with youth. And we at Dibble Institute are most grateful for all the work. And we'll be remembering you that you all have a great, great, blessed Thanksgiving.
Yes, for sure. And then our gift for you for December, can't believe it's almost at the end of the year, is you can view view any or all of our archived webinars at this particular on our website under webinars and archives. And feel free to, if you need a participation certificate, please email me directly with your need, and I'll be sure to get that to you as well. Again, thank you so much, Anita and Polly. Do you have any final words before we finish?
have, evidently, there was one question that didn't come up.
Oh,
It's for
good.
Polly. What curriculum are you using in elementary schools for this law?
So for pre-K through 5th grade, we use the Committee for Children's Second Step Child Protection Unit, which is a wonderful program that talks about safety. And then
Okay, go ahead.
And then for middle school, we use another evidence-based intervention called New Culture.
Okay, and best advice for how to get this law passed in a person's state. She lives in Oklahoma.
I guess I would say, I don't know if Polly has any hints. My first thing would be is to contact Erin on her website. She did answer me a few emails, so I know she does check that.
Okay.
Is that it?
Okay, that's
right. Again,
yes. That would be it. And if you have a question afterwards, please put it on before you leave the webinar, and we will be sure to answer it in an email.
Okay, great, and y'all have a good day. Thank you for attending with us.
Thank you, Kathy.